各位观众朋友们，大家好，欢迎收看 JxJ 论坛，由我 Jimmy 马健，我们的好朋友 Jim Noteware 为我们一起讨论这个台北的时事。Jim, are you staying warm?
Staying warm, Jimmy. Yes.
It's the coldest day of the year. I hope it's not like last year. I know it's not going to be. I hope the ERCOT is more prepared this year. You remember last year's Armageddon?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it was so cold, I brought in the brass monkey.
Oh, God. But this year has been, how do I say this? Today, specifically, as someone that managed a portfolio, a majority of Americans, if they look at their 401k, they took a big hit. Metaverse, Facebook went down, largest wipeout of in the history of Wall Street of a corporate's value. We have PayPal that went down yesterday, and the headlines is that is creating a lot of chatter amongst my friends that are whether left or right. Number one, what Whoopi Goldberg said, and very importantly is our audience should know what really happened at CNN with the ouster of Zucker. What is your insight on what happened there at CNN?
Well, his forced resignation was not because of an inappropriate relationship or even the stated reason, his failure to disclose the relationship. Everybody knew it for a very long time. Whether you disclose it on a form or your stockholders or your parent company know it, yes, he probably should have dotted some I's and crossed T's. I think he was fired as a face-saving way for both him and the network. He has done a lot of goofy programming, and that has led to a fall in their audience. They're operating with an audience of below 50% of what it was last year. Under normal economic circumstances, a board of directors would take that action anyway. But beyond that, CNN is part of AT&T, and AT&T is interested in merging it into John Malone's company. And Malone has said, I want to keep AT&T intact, but we're going to have massive changes. I think massive changes, A, in editorial direction, B, in direct programming to reflect those first changes, and then also huge staff cuts. They have anchors everywhere. They often don't bring in experts. They have anchors talking to other CNN reporters as experts, et cetera, et cetera. My own view is they've lost their way, and they need a major shakeup.
So if the viewer,
they're actually unnecessary in the whole spectrum of things. Yes, Fox is on the right. You got CNBC on the left. CNN and CNBC are really one and the same. Then you've got your three big networks. And the whole media business is breaking down into different fragments all the way around. Some people say that the big three networks aren't going to last for another 10 years. So we'll see. I think this may be a canary in the coal mine about other changes to come. They got to get back to base economics.
Jim, you're saying that Zucker's ouster is because he's not performing, because ratings are down. If the numbers are good, he would have stayed, because you're right. Everyone knows about his relationship, whether we agree with it or not, because I'm very adamant, whether it's consensual or not, it's not appropriate, because I have personal experience, someone close to me, where it was where she was put in a situation where it was just, it's bad. So I'm very sympathetic to a stringent enforcement of this. You have daughters too. I hope any of my daughters will never, ever have to go through that. However, if your insight is true too, by the way, what you said, that yes, it's everyone knows. I mean, they live in the same building.
Yeah.
They're both divorced, but I mean, 20 years they worked together. He brought her over first. I mean, Katie Couric even brought it up in her book. So, well, some people are saying Chris Cuomo brought him down with him. But either way, media is segmented just like our voters, appeal to their people. When you want to talk about CNN, then we have to bring up Joe Rogan, okay?
Mm-hmm.
I saw data that shows that Joe Rogan he averages 11 million listeners on his podcast.
Mm-hmm.
While at prime time, CNN averages about 1 million viewers.
At best, 1 million.
Best. 11 million to 1. Mm-hmm. And yet, before I put in my 2 cents, whether me or you agree with what Joe Rogan says, I want to tell our viewers both sides of the argument, and then I want to hear what your thought is.
Well, number one, I have not been following it very closely. And number two, related to not following that very closely, I don't follow a lot of these, I don't know what to call them, independent podcasts and other forms of media communication.
Then that's great. You don't have to, and this is even better because I think the majority of Americans don't. So let me give you a little very quick run through. I don't listen to this podcast. Podcasts are very popular. It's the future. So Joe Rogan, his claim to fame, he hosted a TV show called Fear Factor. Entertaining guy. UFC, he's a commentator. So he's just a guy's guy. Talk about sports. No matter what you think of him, I never thought of him as someone that is sitting there purposely being very political. However, he does speak to people that have a different opinion. I'm being fair here. He does speak to people. For example, he has a doctor on there that is known to be the very slim minority amongst the medical community to think the vaccine is harmful and to think that it's a hoax and whatnot. Now, I don't like to go against science, but science is continuously moving. What we knew about this COVID, this pandemic in the beginning to now, we're learning as we go. So to criticize Fauci or to criticize, look, there's money involved. We know that. We know. I just don't see why. I don't believe that the United States government is purposely trying to missile their people or trying to hurt us people. And what Rogan is doing is presenting just a different side. However, the criticisms of him is not about cancel culture, is that he's being paid a lot of money because he's popular. He started 20 years, he's being paid $100 million, his contract, because he has so many listeners. And he is pandering to the people that will listen to him and is still profit driven. Me and you, we're doing this because I enjoy it, but also to provide different viewpoints. It's not to profit. But if I were to profit, I would also talk about topics that would attract the most listeners, whether it's extreme right or left. This is a reflection of our society now. You want what we talk about to provide different perspectives and to be fair. No one will listen to that because most people don't because they want to hear what they want to hear. So to me, this is because the controversy with Joe Rogan Experience, that's the name of the show, is that there are people that are leaving Spotify, protesting because they're saying that he's spreading false information and inciting the crowd. Okay, well, I don't want to necessarily agree with that. I don't think he's sitting there saying that the Holocaust didn't happen or that Putin is a good guy. He's not saying these things. He's inviting people on there to say things that they believe in that is not true. That probably is not true. Mm-hmm. That's what's going on. Jim, and to me, that connects to CNN and to how media has been fragmented. That also proves what you were saying, that the different segments of it.
Yeah. Well, couple of thoughts in response to what you've said.
Yeah.
My understanding from the few news reports I've paid attention to about Rogan is that he doesn't espouse any particular point of view or have people on who are consistently part of a point of view. He interviews people from all parts of a spectrum and all subjects. People like to listen to him because of that diversity and sometimes because he says outrageous, or his guests say outrageous things. It's like Howard Stern was half a generation ago.
Shock.
So there's entertainment value, which I think is what attracts the 11 million listeners. Now, it's entertainment, and that's why people are doing it. And all the big radio hosts that attract, it's quasi-entertainment. You and I take things like news very seriously, but we have to acknowledge that news, like sports, is increasingly entertainment. And so we have to understand that, and people are chasing ratings, volume of listeners, which translates into dollars from advertisers, dollars from bottom line. So if people are going to do that, I say, let them do it. The government is not involved in this Joe Rogan controversy, to my knowledge. This is between Joe Rogan and Spotify. And if Spotify wants to hold on to him because he attracts 11 million viewers, which is very profitable, not just for Rogan, but for Spotify, Spotify wouldn't pay him if they didn't earn it first. And so if somebody wants to protest, whether it's Neil Young or Joni Mitchell or anybody that listens to their music, fine, let them go. They can latch on to somebody else, or somebody else will be created to entertain them. To me, it's a big world. Now, some people are proposing that people like Joe Rogan get silenced because they're spreading misinformation. Anymore, using the pandemic as an example, what is misinformation? I mean, my own 2 cents are people should not be censored. They should be free to speak about whatever they want. And if it's misinformation on some things, I mean, I've read a whole lot of books that basically say Dr. Fauci is full of misinformation. At the very same time, he's trying to get people silenced for spreading misinformation. Dr. Fauci against the Great Barrington Project. The Great Barrington Project is full of some of the most eminent scientists and physicians there are. And for Fauci to say that they're spreading disinformation, the whole disinformation as a technique to silence your opponents for good or bad. Nobody knows what the truth is anymore.
I'm sorry, Jim. I have to cut you off because that is not true. Number one, Dr. Fauci we're politicizing it, okay? Once again, we're falling into the trap of what the Trumpers want us to do. Science is science. I don't know what any single doctor in Houston, and I know a lot of them, that will tell me the vaccine doesn't work. The vaccine works. The pandemic is real. I am sorry. Whether Dr. Fauci have personal interests, the profit from it has nothing to do with it. But what Joe Rogan does is what Trump did, is telling people to drink bleach, to take horse medicine, to give out fake medical advice that causes death. That's not acceptable. The example they use, I know someone that died from the vaccine. 1 out of 100 million? How many people have that? We know for a fact that if you're not vaccinated, you're up to 90 times more likely to die from this pandemic. That's a fact. These are science. If you want me to doubt science and doubt everything, then we can start being X-Files and doubt everything, go down the rabbit hole. I trust doctors.
Well, I'll tell you what, Jimmy, if people don't take I haven't agreed on the vaccine issue.
Joe Rogan doesn't agree.
I don't care what Joe Rogan says. I don't listen to Joe Rogan. And I wouldn't listen to somebody who quotes him as saying, he's not a medical expert. All he can do is reflect what somebody else tells him. And on a good day, he thinks this way, and a bad day, he thinks that way. To me, it's irrelevant. Ultimately, people are going to choose who they want to listen to.
But Jim, you're intelligent, you're educated, you're at the top 0. No, I'm not buttering you up saying you're intelligent. You're at the top 0.1%. Intellectually, you're highly educated. It's unfair because, I hate to say this, the majority of the population are sheeps. I know the right always say that.
I happen to agree with that.
The right always say, we're just following the media, we're letting the liberal media lead the way. But some of these totalitarian countries with strong men like China, Russia, it works because uneducated masses could create a lot of problems. They listen to the wrong thing. They believe wrong. They don't have critical thinking. They cannot decipher what's right and wrong, and the media preys on that. Me and you, this is why we see both sides. We're all vaccinated. Do I agree with the complete shutdown or not shutdown? This half-assed job where the economy is suffering, yet the pandemic's going. We're here, But I choose to trust in our government, whether it's Republican or Democrat. Not because I'm a sheep, I'm a because I'm a law-abiding citizen that I'll just do that. No, because if everyone starts doubting it, I mean, you know what I mean? It's very frustrating, Jim. Do you understand where I'm coming from? It's we cannot have the cake and while we. Anyways, go ahead, Jim. I'm sorry, I'm at a loss of words because it's a very frustrating day today.
Okay, you've brought up several things. I would like to believe in a single source of information and credibility. I just don't think it exists anymore. A generation or two ago when I was growing up, the government was the gold standard for credibility. I think it has chosen to lose that by politicizing things. Yes. Did Mr. Trump politicize things? Yes. Did Mr. Obama politicize things? Is Mr. Biden? Yes, and yes. And it makes things much more difficult. Ultimately, I think people have to sort things out for themselves, their families, their own trusted advisors, be they doctors or accountants or attorneys or whatever. And if they're dumb enough to drink bleach, then they won't last very long and we won't have to listen to them a second time. I mean, things take care of themselves. I'm also a believer in Darwin's theory, okay? People do dumb things. If they're bad genetics, nature takes care of itself. It may sound harsh to Christian believers like another part of me, but it's not my goal to get up every morning and worry about protecting some guy who wants to self-destruct.
It's not our job or our duty.
It's not my responsibility. Am I my brother's keeper? My own brother, yeah, but not some guy I don't know halfway across the country. No, I want to take care of myself. Are we better when we're
it's the American way, yeah.
But are we better when we're united? Yes, of course. Do I want to help take care of people that are legitimately suffering? Of course. And that's part of the responsibility we all delegate upwards to the government. I don't think the government's doing a very good job. The government's not doing a good job with homelessness. Anywhere, everywhere, at any level of government, in any geography. It's a very systemic problem.
You want to talk about?
Meanwhile, homelessness is growing.
It's so odd that every time we tape a show, we don't rehearse. We come and talk about what bothers us. For you to bring up these things is crazy. Just today, I had a neighbor email me and tell me, hey, Jimmy, you're involved in a lot of charities. I lived in Sugar Land for 30 years and never seen this. We live in a very affluent suburb. We have a Randall's that everyone goes to. Mm-hmm. My neighbor is driving through the Randall's. In the back of the Randall's is a trash can. He drove by and saw an elderly man, probably 70s, dressed decent, eating out of the trash trash can.
Well,
what have this society come to?
That's sad in a lot of ways.
I'm sad for our elderly. I'm sad that the safety net's gone. How could this happen here? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to drag away from what you said, because you mentioned homeless. You mentioned, yes, our homeless, a lot of veterans, drug issue. I don't think there's one thing to fit all. I'll let you come back to this in a bit, but I want to respond to what you said just now. When you were growing up, you believed the government, but I hate to say this. I used to think too, when I was younger, we only had ABC, NBC, CBS, the big three, maybe Fox. And it was so much easier. But in reality, with this information age where there's open source for any, scandals and anything you do, people will know. In a way, it could be, it's a boon. It's a sword, it's a double-edged sword. Why? The government lied to us all the time back then. From Watergate to Roswell to cover-ups to Panama to Cuba, Missile. I mean, the government lied.
Yeah.
They lied.
Yeah.
Now they still lie, except they get caught easier because there's so many internet media. There's so many different sources. There's so many ways to get busted.
Mhm.
So is it good? It's good and bad. So like I said, like I always say, technology is good and bad. Facebook, speaking of Facebook, did I mention on the show how a loss wiped out historically?
You alluded to it. You did not mention it, and I heard about it. I'd like to hear from you.
We'll talk about it. I want to give you a chance to respond, but I'm saying today I'm just so stressed. The market is. I mean, we know this is going to happen. Yesterday, PayPal lost a quarter of its value. I mean, Amazon. I mean, everybody is hurting. And then you know what? I want to hear your take on the economy, because Wall Street doesn't represent what's going on. Your experience in going through at least 3 or 4 recessions by now, and the fact that you're resilient enough to make it through all of them and are still doing well. What is your take? Why don't you respond to what I said just now? If there was more, respond to it so we can move on to this, because I'm very bothered today. I'm very bothered by a lot of things.
Okay. Well, I normally you ask me what I want to talk about, and I would say today I'm very, very concerned about the economy. Very concerned, starting with inflation.
Oh God.
I believe that it has more momentum and is in the right on the threshold of getting out of control here. And I really don't see the government, particularly either from a fiscal side, Congress and the administration, or from a monetary side, the Federal Reserve, taking measures to bring it under control. The Fed says it's going to raise interest rates in 3 steps of 25 basis points apiece. Right now, by all reasonably respected measures of inflation, we have inflation at about the consumer price index at about 7% annually. We have the producer price index at about 10% annually, which means as things come down the supply chain from producer to consumer, it's going to go up. And at the same time, we have interest rates measured by treasuries at, let's say, 10 years of about less than 2%. So 7 minus 2 is 5. So anybody who buys a treasury bond is in negative 5% territory. This cannot last. Meanwhile, and I had great respect for Ben Bernanke, who was the former head of the Fed, when he came up with this concept of quantitative easing as a way to deal with the long interest rate part of the curve, 10 years to 30 years, and created quantitative easing, et cetera, et cetera. But now quantitative easing isn't just an tool for economic stimulus, which we needed in 07, 08, and 09. We need exactly the opposite right now because we have excess demand, not insufficient demand like we had then. But here's the point I'm making. It's not only an economic stimulus tool, which is already overstimulated currently. They are using the tool of quantitative easing to finance the federal deficit. And the federal deficit is enormous beyond anybody's ever dream because of what happened to stimulate us out of the early stages of the pandemic. What we should be doing is bringing things back under control. Now, let's take what I just said and relate it back to what you said about the coming bloodbath on Wall Street, starting with the big tech stocks. Why are they valued so highly? There may be lots of reasons, like Google reporting record revenues and record earnings. That's wonderful. That justifies some element of value. But I think any observer, this is not controversial what I'm about to say, acknowledges that all financial assets, including stocks in the market, are at the levels they are because interest rates are artificially low. I just calculated that across the board, they're probably negative 5%. That is artificially low. And just last week, when the Fed, Jerome Powell, started talking about this, he even mentioned raising a quarter point in March and another quarter point in the middle of the year and another quarter. What happened? The Dow Jones lost 400 to 600 points in one day. Just the breadth of thinking and discussing it, not doing it, just warning about it. My point is there's a lot of air in the stock market. And there's a lot of air in other assets too. And I see it in the real estate market every day. People are way overpaying for some real estate assets. Why are they doing that? Because they're liquid. And we can talk about why they're liquid, and they're chasing what they think is yield, and they're willing to pay up front. A big motivation for a lot of real estate investors, now we're getting into my world, is trying to avoid taxes on what's called a 1031 exchange, and or trying to put capital to work from abroad. In other words, it's flight capital. They really don't care what their returns are. What they want to do is preserve its value. And we're in dangerous territory when some people call this a bubble. And it's just, and now back to what we said about the media, I have these observations and I can show people the equivalent of science, calculations, numbers, everything, and say, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. But people are doing it. But it's not my job to get up in the morning and warn them not to do it. I may do it I may warn them if they ask me. I may even take advantage of things on the other side and sell to a guy who wants to overpay. Wonderful. Okay. Then we both win. He gets his hands on something that he's happy with. I get more money than I think I deserve. Okay. But I think people have to make decisions for itself. There's an old saying that it takes all kinds to make the world. That is true. I think it takes all kinds to make a market. And I think the free flow of information, open discussions, debates back and forth, sharing of analyses, even having different information, that creates a market. And ultimately, markets are stable. Why are we in trouble now on some things? If you believe like I do, it's because the government has come in and interfered by aggressive fiscal policy and aggressive monetary policy. We'll go back into a short amount of history. The last time the federal budget was balanced was in the mid-90s when Clinton was president. Nobody thought that a liberal president could balance the budget, but he had Republicans in both houses of Congress. He had Newt Gingrich as the Speaker of the House, and he had John Kasich as the director of the Congressional Budget Committee. And so they knew that life was very good economically in the mid to late 90s. And the Keynesian business says, yes, we need a multiplier and we need to stimulate at the bottom, but they were at the top. So what did they do? They pulled money out of the system. Now, wind the clock forward. 10 years later, President Bush, conservative Republican, was president. And guess what? We had huge deficits. We had hugely aggressive monetary policy when Alan Greenspan was chairman of the Fed. Guess what happened? Instead of being prosperous and turning the late 90s into the 00s, like what happened when Clinton left, we had the 06, 07, 08, 07, 08, 09 fiscal collapse.
Subprime mortgage crisis. And in the 2001, after Clinton, when Bush came on, we had the dot-com boom. Right. Those are the two biggest significant losses, collapse in the last 20 years, 2 decades.
So my point is, I feel now, much like I felt in 06 and 07, just before that crash, and I feel the same observations that we did in the late 70s when Jimmy Carter was president, because we had very expansive fiscal policy but the prior 10 years, because of the Vietnam War, we had dramatically expansive monetary policy. We financed the Vietnam War by creating money supply. And it took the 70s. We took the gold standard off in 71 and 72. We made a lot of economic mistakes that we didn't have to pay for about 10 years. And then we paid for them.
Yeah. No matter what, you kick the ball down the road, it will get a pay sooner or later.
And so
with interest.
I'm feeling these things right now. Yes, the U.S. domestic economy is quite good in many measures, but it's way over leveraged and it's way over inflated.
I've advised, God, Jim, I wish I could talk to you more often because everything you said is absolutely true. My stress level is at an all-time high. I've advised most clients to get out the market before Christmas.
Yeah,
we have been in a 13 years since 2009, essentially 13 years of unprecedented gains. We had a couple of hiccups along the way. I've been through probably two major recessions, essentially in my career. Technically, four of them pullbacks where the losses is more than 10%. We knew that these the big five tech companies, we knew what Facebook is doing because Zuckerberg already said with Metaverse, they invested $10 billion and they're going to lose all of it. They were hoping they could profit from the virtual currency, which they gave up on. So Facebook took the massive loss. And also, very importantly, what people don't see is that Facebook lost new users for the first time since it became publicly traded. I know for a fact, as someone that is still tech savvy enough, I don't use Facebook anymore. To me, only older folks use it. My parents use it. You cannot. I mean, if that's the case, there's no way.
I've never used it. My kids,
so you're way ahead of the game. You don't even need to use it.
No, my kids who are now grown adults, but 10 years ago they were still in college. They said, "Daddy, don't use it. You will lose your privacy."
Your kids are smart because that's what it is. Think about it. You're paying them while they're selling your information. What a great business. Purely free. It's built on nothing. So, I mean, it's at an all-time high. Amazon, Google, Facebook, PayPal. PayPal lost a quarter. We know this is coming. But when there's greed, when there's blood in the street, I mean, greed. Everyone says to go to real estate, go to gold. I told people to go to crude oil, go to natural gas. But what you said about real estate, this bubble scares me because I don't mind talking about it. I practice what I preach. I'm getting out of the capital market and Wall Street, and I put a lot of assets into actual real estate. So I definitely need to talk to you in a little bit because maybe next week when we do a show, because in Houston, we know a lot of, especially our viewers, we have a lot of real estate investors. We know it's a safety net, for a lot of immigrants, they want to see and feel and touch what they put their money in. So you're right about that. I don't take foreign investment. I don't take money, safety money, safe haven money. I don't want that. I give my investors a healthy return because we know what we're building and what we're doing is slow but steady. But if it's a bubble, you cannot go against the tide. You cannot fight market conditions, period. I know the lessons of the 70s of what happened in Houston because that's when, I was a child, but I knew in the 80s, I knew my parents had a lot of friends tell them stories of how they lost their shirt, how their house is worth nothing. And there's also the other ones that were conservative and saved up their cash and bought high-rise in a medical district or high-rise downtown for dirt that are worth 10x, 20x.
Yeah, after it collapsed, yeah.
But now it's worth 10, 20 times more than what they paid for. The stories are so many. There's not one. I remember clearly the fear. And when people speculate what the stock market real estate is the same, it's a bubble. We know it is, but there's no but. You know what? I'll just have to let you tell our audience about this because I'm in a pickle. I am very worried. And now we're at, time. We're always running out of time. Jim, thank you for letting our audience know, explain to them what you know, 50, 60 years of industry knowledge, 50 years of industry knowledge. And to share this knowledge is very generous of you. And I hope all of our audience in the Houston area stays warm and safe. Hopefully we don't freeze. I know HISD, Fort Bend ISD. I know Houston area schools have canceled classes tomorrow. We know up north, our friends in Dallas and North Texas, I know they're
very bad up there.
It's bad up there. So
they get it there. But stay safe financially as well as physically.
Yes. And we will see each other next week. And there's still New Year's for Lunar New Year. So Happy New Year once again, Year of the Tiger.
You and I were together last Saturday celebrating Lunar New Year, and this year's the Tiger. So
yes, it is. I was very happy to see you. First time since the pandemic. So 2 years.
Yeah.
I mean, it was weird, right? It was unreal. And we're finally out there. So Jim, take care. Thank you very much.
It was a nice celebration, but thank you, Jimmy.
It was.
Good luck between now and next week. Okay.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.